through the capital planning process and everything else. So let's touch on the energy transition, and this is our last meaty piece of the day. The other is important. And just want you to log in your mind some of these visuals you've seen before, but log in your mind. All of you got your own capital planning processes in play with the hospitals, whether you're at the table or not. We have to stop like-for-like replacement of equipment and move to having a vision of what the low-carbon future of your hospital looks like. Where will the heat recovery chillers be? What is the equipment that's affected? So we've just got a handful of slides here. This is not, in other workshops will go much deeper into this and perhaps not quite so deep into the immediate operational improvements. But this stuff really matters. We cannot afford to make bad decisions going forward, and every capital decision related to the plant in your hospital has to be made through the low carbon lens. What does that future look like? And avoid doing things that, again, are going to be stranded assets. We talked a couple of years ago about trigger events. So generally, all of you have got some plant that's at the end of life. If it's an emergency generator, we care about that, but it doesn't fit in here. If it's a boiler, if it's a chiller, if it's an air handling unit, if it's local DX units, direct expansion cooling units in the morgue or in the kitchen or anywhere else, most of the equipment replacements you have a low carbon alternative to where they're going. So the idea of a trigger event is when something coming to end of life, you have to start putting in place this planning for what's the ripple effect. Like if I got a chiller that needs to be replaced, if it's a heat recovery chiller, what does that do to my boiler plant? What does that do to this? What does it do to that? So having that vision, and it takes you a while to put it together, but working through that, and we can help wherever we can. You get something like a trigger event, which is, and I think somebody in this room will recognize the hot water boiler plant at end of rated life. Then you go down this decision tree of your design options, like-for-like replacement, or a smaller plant, right-sized to the loads which are coming down. So what are our current loads? Because the original calculations weren't necessarily correct. Testing, you'll hear this over and over again, like testing your systems. So in this case, non-destructive testing of the boilers. Are they really at the end of life? Like, it's curious because boilers burn fossil fuels which create greenhouse gas emissions, but we put a lot of time into extending the life of plant because generally, if we can squeeze another 5 years out of it, we'll be better positioned for the low carbon solution when the time comes. So keeping what we've got running efficiently, but doing testing. If this was an air handling unit, it would be a different decision tree and so on. Looking at the capital cost. If you do conventional like-for-like, what does that cost? If you then look at the low-carbon alternative, you relate that to the building condition assessment. So what other plant and equipment are affected? What have you got coming up for replacement over the next several years? And that's how you kind of prepare a roadmap. So this is conceptual, but the idea that in your mind, you've got this is coming to end of life, and when that happens, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do that. You've all got your favorite consultants, bring them in, have that conversation now so that if you have an equipment failure, you're not stuck. I got no choice. I got to get this back replaced. I got to do the right thing right now. So having that idea, you need a longer term view of the facility on top of all the other things you're being asked to do right now. So this notion of the flow diagram, if this, then that, then that, then that, and you've thought through the implications. And I know, Julian, you spend a lot of time with hospitals. Enbridge can help you with that. They're seeing what other people are doing. You can help each other with this. This networking is a really big deal. So this, everything in front, when you're next building a condition assessment is due having that conversation with a contractor about, don't give me a whole bunch of like-for-like. I want better solutions. Like when this steam plant comes to the end, what's the replacement? And give yourself lead time so you have time to think that out. So on top of everything else, you have a primary role in this kind of imagining, visioning what the low carbon plant looks like and taking steps along the way. So have in mind this is fascinating stuff, by the way. It feels like a lot of work. It's fun. you'll all have the slide deck, so the slide deck will be up on our website sooner rather than later. Here are a whole bunch of lists of this is when that trigger event, when that equipment gets to a position, what else, what are the options you should be thinking through? And so bring in your consulting engineer and challenge them on these things, go through this with them. Look at your latest building condition audit and say, here are the next 3 things that are coming up in the next 10 years and marry them into this. So the idea of having, I've got kind of, it's not fully fleshed out, but I got a pretty good idea of the roadmap for my facility. I know how I'm going to get to that low carbon plant. It won't be with one big $20 million investment. It will be to a plan. It will be to a vision, and that every step is a step in the right direction. So again, when this is posted, take a look at this, and this is kind of a little checklist, if you like, of things that you can go through with whoever your advisors are to plan that pathway, plan that roadmap to the low carbon plant of the future, because 15 years from now, that will be what your plant will look like. It's just a matter of how efficiently and how cost effectively can you get there. And for us, the big thing is please don't make bad capital decisions that you'll regret later with either oversized plant or the wrong kind of plant. So final little piece here, even medical equipment. If medical equipment is being spec'd and it's got air-cooled condenser attached to it, so you're sentencing yourself to rejecting that heat through the winter forever. It needs to be water-cooled. So whoever's making that decision, you've got to be there, because when it's water-cooled, you can connect it up to the chilled water system. All of your chilled water systems, if you have them, there's a couple of hospitals that don't, they'll all be running year-round in the future, because that's the system that goes galloping around the hospital and collects up all those bits of heat here, there, and everywhere, and comes back to your new heat recovery chiller, which you're using to heat the hospital. So hospitals have a huge amount of internally generated heat. It all has to be captured. We've shown you that picture before. Just imagine you've got a membrane around the whole hospital and no heat's going to be allowed to escape, whether it's exhaust air, whether it's discharge water, whether it's air-cooled condensers. It doesn't get allowed to escape without giving up its heat, because it's by far the most cost-effective heat that you've got. Otherwise, you've got to start digging in the ground or taking heat out of the outside air, which is not very efficient, but will happen also. But this whole pathway of every capital decision, even those that are outside your department, has to be taken through a low-carbon lens.